Hi, you are still listening to WWGC. We have got a special treat for you here tonight. We've got Pete Seeger on the phone. Could almost be considered the father of American modern folk music. How are you doing, Pete? No?
I credit a guy named Alan Lomax, the son of the man who collected cowboy songs 100 years ago, discovered Home on the Range, Wreck of the Old 97, and so on. And in the 1930s, his son Alan said, "Father, I want to carry on your work." And then a few years later, his father got him a job at only age 22 as the acting curator of the archives of American folk song in the Library of Congress. Well, Alan Lomax, in 6 short years before they fired him, did more than most people would have done in a lifetime. He found an actor with a good voice. He says, "Burl, you can make more money giving concerts of these songs than trying to act in shows." And pretty soon Burl Ives was famous coast to coast. I was with him when Alan taught him "Jimmy Cracked Corn and I Don't Care." And he showed Josh White and Leadbelly that there were white audiences who would like to hear their African American music, old or new. And he met Woody Guthrie in 1940 when Woody hitchhiked from California to New York Island, making up the verses of that famous song on the way with his thumb stuck out into the February winds. And he said, "Woody, do you realize you're right in the tradition of the men, or whoever they were, who wrote ballads about Robin Hood and about outlaws like Jesse James and Sam Bass? Don't ever stop writing songs. That is your mission in life." And he said it so very earnestly that Woody must have figured, well, he must know something about this. And Woody never did stop writing songs until finally this disease sent him to the hospital, and he ended up not able to talk.
You got to know Woody Guthrie fairly well, didn't you?
I knew him roughly, exactly, from February 23rd, 1940, and I visited him in the hospital every few months. The last time I saw him, though, he couldn't talk. His wife had 2 great big pieces of paper. One said yes in letters a foot high, and the other said no. And she said, "Woody, Pete's come to see you. Do you recognize Pete?" And his arm flailed around in the air and then slapped down on the yes. That's the only way we knew that he knew that I was there.
Are there any old stories of Woody, do you suppose, that haven't been told yet?
I don't think so, except I would like to say that the book by Joe Klein, a biography, was a very unbalanced book. Nothing Joe said was not true, but he'd spend 10 pages telling how Woody was splitting up with his wife, and then one sentence, Woody writes a song called "So Long, Been Good to Know You." He left out all Woody's wonderful victories and jokes. Woody was always cracking jokes. I never think of Woody without a flicker of a grin around the corner of his mouth. But to read Joe's book, it was one terrible time after another. But this is typical journalism. You know, editors say, if it doesn't bleed, it won't lead. So they give you the dirt. That's their opinion of what a good story is, because that's what sells papers. And to my mind, if there's no human race here in 100 years, among the main culprits will be journalists.
All right, now, Pete, you still play some concerts, don't you?
Well, I'm going out tomorrow to do some Martin Luther King programs in 3 schools. And at the end of the week, I'll be going to Brandeis University after I get through with the People's Music Weekend. So it's I'm busier than anybody my age should be.
When you play these shows, you've got such a repertoire. You probably know thousands of songs by now. How do you decide which songs to play?
I used to know 1,000 songs, maybe, but I've forgotten more than I ever knew. I get in the middle of a song that I've sung for hundreds of times and can't remember a verse. But this is typical of people 81 years old.
So how do you decide what songs you do sing?
I rarely plan in advance. When I sing with my grandson, as I'm singing tomorrow, We don't plan in advance. We think in advance of songs we might like to sing, and we jot down the titles with big fat magic marker so we can read them 6 feet away, and we put the piece of paper on the floor, and while we're singing the song, we're thinking what will we sing next.
Now, what advice would you have to people such as myself who are about 20 years old and just starting out in folk singing these days?
I'd say sing for as wide a range of different people as you can. Sing for old folks, and go to a senior citizens home. They'd love to hear you. Go to a hospital, veterans hospital, and sing old songs and new songs. Don't try and just sing your own songs. Sing a wide variety of things, and then sing for schools, sing for babies. Some of my best songs have been written from children when I was singing for them, and they were, matter of fact, they're bringing out a whole book called One Grain of Sand with a lullaby I wrote from one of my daughters when she was only about 8 months old.
I've always enjoyed singing to babies myself because they never care if you forget the words. As long as you get the tune somewhat right, they're not going to notice anything. Where do you think traditional folk music is going in the future? Do you think it has a future, or is it dying already?
Well, keep in mind there's as many different kinds of folk music as there are folks. There's about 400 languages in the world, and probably several kinds of folk music for each language. So I'm happy to see folk music going in many directions at the same time. People that like old Irish ballads, they sing them. People who like blues, sing them. People who like gospel songs, sing them. People who like union songs, sing them. I say don't just listen to it. Try making it yourself, maybe with a few friends and a bottle of beer or something to make the songs come, and enjoy yourself, and pretty soon you'll be learning. Every time you sing somewhere, you learn something.
Do you hear a lot of new people who are out singing today, the new generation of singers?
Oh, there's not hundreds, there's thousands, probably tens of thousands of them. And some are extraordinarily talented. Who knows, some kid in diapers right now might put together a song that is so beautiful that it captures the hearts of people around this entire world and is translated into many languages. It could happen.
You never know.
One never knows.
Adam, let's tell the audience that we are listening to a conversation between you and Pete Seeger. Pete Seeger's calling from his home in New York and up around, not too far from Vassar College, right, Pete?
That's right, about 15 miles south of Vassar, overlooking the Hudson River. And earlier this evening, I was out skating around my backyard on a homemade skating rink with some family and friends.
Remember when I used to follow you around like a puppy? And I remember one time you told me, you said, Steve, I hope you're going to learn what not to do as well as what to do when you watch me sing.
Well, you can learn everywhere. And at this age of life, I'm now convinced that the good and the bad are so tangled up in this world, all you can do is laugh. Somebody will make what seems on the surface a wonderful invention, but it has a side effect no one ever dreamed of, and later on can be very, very bad. And the opposite might happen.
Smithsonian Folkways sent us a wonderful collection of broadside recordings, many of which were not really meant to be marketed, but some of them are excellent. You're on there. Sis Cunningham, the co-founder of Broadside, is on there. I guess technically you're almost a co-founder of Broadside, aren't you? Do you see Sis Cunningham anymore?
Malvina Reynolds should get the credit. Malvina Reynolds wrote a letter to Sing Out magazine in the mid-50s, late 50s. Says, Sing Out doesn't have room to print all the new songs that are being written, and there should be a magazine that just prints nothing but new songs. And in New York City, my friends Sis Cunningham and Gordon Friesen said, do you think we could do it? And I said, you bet you could. I'll help you. I gave them a little cash, but I didn't have enough to give them as much as they needed. They just scraped along, for years just making the rent money and not much more. Gordon had to have a job on a newspaper, and their daughter got a job finally, but they still live in that same apartment on West 98th Street in Manhattan. Well, Gordon's dead, but Sis is 90, still going strong.
Have you seen this broadside box set that recently came out?
I love it. It's, for one thing, it's like a book, and the print is big enough to read. My old eyes can't read the small type on most CDs booklets. And the CDs are put in cardboard folders with each chapter. I think there's 4 or 5 CDs in this, and it's a book you can, ring binding, you can put it up, put it in the box, and put the box up in the bookshelf right along with the other books. Very nice format.
What about the recording of your song sung by other people that Appleseed has recently released? You said that it sold better than any of your other recordings, and you're not even on there, are you?
I only had one record, one LP in my life that sold very well. It was called We Shall Overcome, and it was a concert at Carnegie Hall where I sang We Shall Overcome and several other songs. I think I also sung Guantanamera on it, I'm not sure. Anyway, Columbia Records had a mild hit, sold like 500,000 or 1 million copies. Most of my records for Columbia sold 20,000, 30,000. For Folkways, a big record sale for them was 5,000, or even less. Some of my records probably sold 500 or 1,000. But Folkways stayed in business by keeping its overhead down. I call it a 2-horse company. Moses Ash and 1 secretary ran the whole thing. Worked like horses.
But Appleseed has this compilation recording that has Nancy Griffin and a lot of other people singing your songs, right?
And now it's sold 100,000 copies.
Wow.
Of course, he paid for some person to help promote it. And I realize now, of course, if you want to sell something, you got to promote it. But Columbia had promoters, but they weren't able to make my song sell well. As a matter of fact, the problem was the sales department did not approve of me. The blacklist was still on. I made a record called Waist Deep in the Big Muddy about Vietnam. And my producer in New York, John Hammond, put it on a 45 RPM single. Out in Denver, Colorado, a few months later, a man came up to me after a concert and said, "Pete, you know I work in the Columbia distributor office here." Oh, I said, "Tell me, how do things go?" And he said, "Well, frankly, my boss doesn't approve of you." And when he heard your record of Waist Deep in the Big Muddy, he just exploded. He says, "Those screwballs in New York must be crazy to think I can sell a record like this." He said, "Pete, your record did not leave the shelf."
Did the blacklist ever stop affecting you, do you think?
Well, sometimes it actually got me more publicity. I'd be singing at a college, and the local John Birch Society would attack me in the newspapers, and all they did was sell more tickets.
It's like that old saying, if you ban a book in Boston, it'll sell 1 million copies.
That's right. Well, we shall see. The fact that I was not blacklisted, though, is one more reason I have faith in America. We have an ancient law called the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. It says basically it says you have a right to your opinion. You have a right to speak out. You have a right to write it down, and you will not necessarily be thrown in jail. Unless you lie about somebody, in which case that somebody can sue you for libel. Actually, I think the world will be saved if everybody realized that every time you open your mouth, every time you communicate, think deeply about what your words will mean. And if you do, there'll be times you'll hold your tongue, or times you'll change your words, or You don't want to necessarily make somebody mad or hurt them, make them feel badly.
We're speaking with Pete Seeger from his home in Beacon, New York. I'm Steve Sedbury, and Adam Seltzer's pretty well conducting this interview here on WWGC 90.7 Carrollton. I've got a calling card, Pete, and it might just run out at any minute, so if it does, we'll let our audience know that it's just the fault of not having enough minutes.
I can't hear you. I guess that means we're off.
You can't hear me?
We're still on.
Okay. Well, Adam, I'll put down the phone. And Pete, I have really enjoyed talking to you again today. And I'm going to go back in the studio and let Adam handle the rest of this.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Pete, I hate to ask because I know you've probably been asked 100,000 times at this point, but we're always hearing stories about what went on at the Newport Folk Festival when Dylan played electric. Would you care to clear it up?
Electric music is not my favorite kind. I like some of it very much. B.B. King, I think he's absolutely fantastic. And I made the big mistake when Bob went electric in Newport of asking the audience, why did you boo Bob? You didn't boo Howling Wolf yesterday. Howling Wolf, the blues singer, he was electric. If he can go electric, why can't Bob? But the reason I was really angry in the beginning was that they didn't have the sound adjusted right, so you couldn't understand the words. And Bob's words are important. And I ran over to the sound people and said, change the sound so you can understand the words. And they shouted back, no, this is the way they want it. And I shouted to them, God darn it, if I had an axe, I'd cut the cable right now.
Well, Pete, Steve tells me that his phone card is just about to run out, so I'm afraid we're going to have to let you go now. I thank you very much for talking to us tonight.
Stay on the air. Don't give up. Who knows what the future will bring.
You never know.
Fine.
You seem to be getting more listeners all the time. Well, thanks a lot.
Okay.
All right. Bye. Once again, that was Pete Seeger we were just talking to live on the air here. It was a terrific interview. Coming up now, I guess the only nice thing to do would be to play a Pete Seeger song, and this is a song off the Broadside box set that we were talking about called Mac the Bomb. Once again, I'll just go ahead and do a station ID. This has been WWGC 90.7 in Carrollton. The show is Appalachian Trails, the Tuesday night folk music show that we play every Tuesday night from 8 to 10 o'clock. We just got off the phone with Pete Seeger in an interview with him. That was really something else. It's a rare treat to get to hear from someone who's been so incredibly influential in American music.